Welcome to AHA, Baldwin. It's nice to have you today.
Yeah, it's so good to be here, to be in conversation with you.
So you're known as the film guru and jack of all trades in the upstate area. So I wanted to get a little bit of history of how you got into filmmaking and why do you have such a strong passion for this industry?
Yeah, so I guess I would say my start in filmmaking came after college. I decided to pursue journalism, but it was really hard to find a job in journalism. And so I started getting interested in documentary, and then at the time I was actually teaching at a alternative school called the Free School, which still exists in the south end of Albany. I taught there for 16 years, and during that time, a friend of mine was making a documentary about the Free School and actually asked me to be a part of it as a teacher in the building who was filming kind of the daily activities. So that's how I got into it. So I was really self-taught and mentored by him. And then we made this film, which actually ended up being a feature-length documentary. And the cool thing was we had all this equipment afterwards, and essentially I started, teaching the students at the Free School filmmaking. And, we're talking about 2004, 2005, like YouTube is just a thing. But really, the biggest thing is there's not a lot of access to this type of teaching and this type of programming. So I realized that, I was self-taught. How do I convey this and kind of share this passion that I've developed for film with young people? And so it was really cool because the Free School, you're allowed to kind of create your own classes and kids can pursue their own interests. So we started a little film program there, and that kind of built to 2008 when a local filmmaking organization partnered with Grand Street Community Arts and had a small fund to start a filmmaking program. And so they reached out to me because they knew I was teaching at the Free School and I was teaching film. And that's how Youth FX was born. And really for me, what I loved about that opportunity was it enabled me to take my passion for teaching and mentorship and combine it with filmmaking into a singular endeavor, which ended up being Youth FX. And the amazing thing that I'm really proud of is that Youth FX was co-founded by 3 young people that I was already working with at the Free School and in other community settings teaching film. And that's Darian Henry, Rashid Howell, and Majestic Tillman. And Rashid and Darian are still now actually directors at Youth FX. And Majestic is a very successful local actor, director, and screenwriter.
That's beautiful. So you got mentored, you mentored them, and now they're able to mentor others. That's such a beautiful story. Really. So speaking of Youth FX, you're the co-founder and the executive director of Youth FX. So why don't you give us a little bit of background? What is Youth FX?
Yeah, so Youth FX essentially is a program that's designed to help build community, build space for creative expression, and empower young people to really be able to be in control of their stories and therefore have agency in the direction of their lives. And I think that filmmaking today is such an incredible tool for all sorts of different things, whether it's something that you want to do for entertainment or for fun or to get a perspective or a point of view across. But I think to me the most powerful part about filmmaking is that it's a collaborative process. And so what it does is it enables young people to really work together in a way that they can kind of build something together, and then at the end of the process they can kind of look back and realize that without the collaborative nature of the process, without the teamwork, without the relationships that they built, that project would never happen. And what I think it does is it really reveals also that I think we put so many restrictions on young people and we put them in so many boxes and have a lot of kind of negative, to me, tropes about youth and teenagers. And I think when you see and witness young people be in a space where they get to co-create something that they have ownership over, it all of a sudden kind of flips these stereotypes and these kind of assumptions we make about them. And I've just been incredibly, to be honest, just blessed to be part of the program myself. Even as the co-creator, I always really consider it to be really a privilege to be around so many young people who are incredibly talented and also coming from a place where I think a lot of times they haven't been afforded the space to just kind of think about what stories would you want to tell, like who are you as a person and how does that get expressed through this creative form of filmmaking. And I think that once you start looking at that, actually what you're doing is you're building leaders. You're building people that have a voice. You're building people that kind of create essentially their own micro centers of gravity where they can draw other young people to what they're doing and have an impact. And the one thing I'll say about Youth FX is we're not the type of organization that's necessarily going to serve thousands of kids every year or 500 kids every year. It's a little bit of a smaller group of people because filmmaking requires a lot more sort of attention. It requires equipment. And so what I always say is that we're building we work really deeply with a small group of young people so that they can kind of build community with other young people.
That's amazing. And I know personally that Youth FX has done some amazing things for the youth in the area. I've had, youth from my program, Amplify Voices, actually be like, you know what, we don't like painting, but we really love film. And I've actually had a couple of my students go over to Youth FX and really be involved in your program. One is Zaire. I think he wanted to become an actor. He's like, I'm not a muralist, but I really love acting and being in front of the camera. And I saw him not too long ago, and he's like, oh my God, Youth FX, like that is what I'm about. So it's really amazing that you're providing this platform for youth to just be able to explore themselves and amplify themselves unapologetically.
I appreciate that.
So what are some impacts on the community that you've seen that Youth FX has had on a broader scale? So once folks leave Youth FX or they're able to graduate and move on, what are some impacts on the community? It could be parents, it could be local organizations, private, anything that you want to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'll start with kind of the internal impacts. It's like, I look at our staff, for example. It's like we have, a staff that's all have come up through the program. And one of the things that I love about that is, Albany, I think, as an artistic space, has been challenged. There's so many different, incredible things that are going on, the work that you're doing, so many incredible musicians and artists, but at the end of the day, there isn't a strong kind of like infrastructure to support that. And I think what ends up happening is a lot of artists will leave the city of Albany to pursue, opportunities in other larger markets, which I don't blame them. But what we're trying to do is say, how do you keep young people also engaged in their own communities and think about how they can build something here? And so, just as an example, our staff, that's to me is a huge impact. Someone like, my co-executive director, Darian Henry, who's just like this incredibly brilliant thinker and organizer and leader and filmmaker. The reason she stayed in Albany is to be a part of Youth FX and to build that and kind of be able to see her vision, kind of expand and see Youth FX grow into these other places that I would have never conceived of, but because of who she was and where she came from and her ideas, she's kind of helped to build that. On a broader scale, just the filmmakers that have kind of come out of it, I hear from students every once in a while, just will randomly be like, oh, I'm going to film school, or I just graduated from the School of Visual Arts, or I just graduated from Ithaca College, or other places, UAlbany, students will go locally and nationally. And to me, what I'm actually the most proud of is the students that come back and have this level of groundedness and confidence in who they are as a person. And to me, that's above what you end up doing as a filmmaker or as a career, is like, who are you as a person?
Yes.
And I think that I have to say is a testament to the staff and the community that we've created, and people like you in our broader community that have also been able to come in and drop in and out of programs and partner with us, and also give young folks the idea that they have like a meaning in their life and a purpose, and that they're valued as young people, and so
and as artists.
As artists,
they're
exactly.
Artists.
And I think that's the kind of thing that I just feel like there's no shortcut to that. Like, you have to have some form where you're able to have interaction with the public and the community at large, And so I think the impacts have been so broad. And then I'll just say also the impacts of the films that we've made. To hear from like young people in other cities that are watching our films, or other small like youth groups or organizations that are like, oh, we watched a Youth FX film, or like randomly I'll be like somewhere else in the country and just say, and people know about Youth FX,
That's
and
amazing.
it's really incredible to kind of realize the reach that we've had with the program without us even kind of sometimes, recognizing it. Yeah. And I think, again, that's the power of the films and the work that we do. And I think young folks, when given that opportunity, are really creating powerful, impactful films that also have a really deep message about where they're at and their state, their state of mind, their like kind of perceptions of their communities around them.
That's amazing. And I know for a fact you're definitely bridging the communities here, and you're definitely helping the youth in the area, because not only, as you said, it's artistic, they're able to express themselves, but I've seen some of the students' films, and you can see some of the pain and trauma just being expressed in such a healthy way. Like, they're able to really take these deep parts of them and just put it out into film for everyone to watch and truly understand what that person is feeling. I just love the films the students make that are just like their soul and their art's in it, and you're just like, wow, I would have never like thought about this person, but now I'm seeing visual poetry about their life, which is such an amazing, accessible.
Absolutely.
I don't know, it's an accessible, beautiful thing to me. So real quick, do you have any projects coming up that you want to share?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll mention that, aside from my primary work with Youth FX, I'm also a filmmaker, and I just finished my third feature documentary with my co-director, Ira McKinley. It's called Out of the Muck, and it's very exciting because it's a very personal project for Ira. It's about his family in the small town in rural South in Pahokee, Florida, and it talks about him reconnecting with his family and, you know, building sort of a connectivity to his own personal history through the process of making the film. And we're really proud to say it's going to air on Independent Lens, you know, PBS, in February of 23. And the great thing about that project is also, as just as an example, you know, we made a lot of connections. We were funded, this is the first time I ever had a film funded, so Ira and I got funding from Sundance and Ford Foundation and Southern Documentary Fund and ITVS. And for me, it's like, how do I help bring the knowledge that I learned in that process back to the young folks that we're working with?
And that's the key, right?
Yeah, and it's like you go back to the, you know, the top of the conversation about mentorship, and it's like, you know, I have mentors, I try to mentor people, and they mentor me too. I mean, there's a lot of reciprocity in this, in the whole, you know, kind of construct of what we've created, because it's not just about like, you know, kind of experts or like professionals, you know, dropping information on young folks. It's also young people kind of expressing their ideas. And I'm gonna tell you, I learn a lot about the creative process from young people, and watching them, you always have opportunities to kind of give back and kind of share that knowledge with other people.
Well, thank you, Baldwin. Wise words to listen to, folks. Well, thank you. I appreciate you coming on AHA today.
Yeah,
It was nice speaking to you.